image processing in Photoshop, actually, and that was back in the early days when I was using a DSLR camera, actually. And it was at first it wasn't a modified camera, but I eventually got a modified DSLR and started doing imaging that way. But all the processing I was doing was in Photoshop and that. And it was a number of years later before I was exposed to PixInsight, and I actually didn't like it when I first tried it. It just seemed overly complicated, and the terminology that they were using it didn't make sense to me anyways. I was struggling to try and figure out how to do some basic things in it, and I actually stopped using it for about a year, and then it was something that I readdressed, went back to it, and having seen more people starting to adopt it, and I went back and tried it again, and I really tried to learn. And I got to give some credit to Ron Breacher there, because my friend, because he was an early adopter of PixInsight, and he showed me around and how to use it basically and stuff. So that was a big help, and that was actually one of the reasons I started the YouTube channel, was because of people like Ron and other people that when I was getting started in astrophotography, when I got back into it, I should say, because I had actually been in astrophotography as a teenager, but it wasn't until later in life that I came back to the hobby, and there was a lot of people that were instrumental in helping me. I mean, when I first started out, I had no idea what flats were or what darks were or anything like that. So there was some very helpful people that lent me their knowledge and got me familiar with how to do astrophotography. It took me a couple of years to get, what I would say good at it before I had my first published image. But I started the YouTube channel because I wanted to give back to the community in some way, and that was, helping people largely with PixInsight. I saw that as a good opportunity because a lot of people were interested in it, just as I had been, but it was very, daunting. It was a steep learning curve when you're getting into PixInsight and trying to understand it.
Really appreciate that. But I think this is just an opportunity for, like, say, the club to ask you a few one-on-one questions to get a response, and maybe there's a nuance or something that they couldn't quite figure out in their head. So maybe we'll just get started, and I just got a quick question about flats. What are flats even? What are they?
Flats are basic in their basic format, are just a snapshot of your optical train, and any of the imperfections that exist within it, starting from the lens at the front, right through to the sensor, and any imperfections, any dust, or anything like that might be present in the optical train. So they take it's a snapshot of your optical train, which can then be used to apply it against and calibrate the light frames, obviously, to correct them.
There's like the problem with flats is like when they don't work properly. And there's the question I had was like, is that a bad flat, or is that just as good as it's going to get, and we have to kind of take it over from there?
Flats,
and maybe like what can PixInsight do to kind of help with that bad flat issue?
When you have bad flats, there isn't a lot that you can do, unfortunately. It's that old garbage in, garbage out situation. So flats are very difficult for beginners. I mean, I struggled with flats when I started doing flats. Like I said, I had no idea what they were, and I was struggling to try and get good flats. Different ways to there's different approaches to taking flats. Certainly, it's gotten easier now with new technology and that flat panels and whatnot that we've got available to us. But I'm old school, and I actually do sky flats. and I don't do it with a t-shirt or anything like that. It's just the telescope is pointed to the zenith, and I just basically, the tracking's off, and do my sky flats that way. And I use Nina, and it has the flat wizard built into it, and it makes it really simple to do sky flats. It has that option that you can select to do sky flats, and it will automatically, you set a few parameters, but it'll automatically determine the best exposure times for the flats, and take as many as you tell it to, along with flat darks as well. So it certainly has changed a lot compared to when I first started out. Again, anyways, back when I was a teenager doing astrophotography, I wasn't taking flats or darks. I didn't even know about them. So it wasn't until I got back into the hobby in 2008 that I was exposed to it and started to understand them. But yeah, it was pretty difficult, and getting the right exposure time, getting the right ADU and whatnot, and having everything, consistent like that. So flats tend to be one of the most difficult things. And I know, just in working with beginners in PixInsight, people that are starting out taking their own data, flats are very, very much a problem situation for a lot of folks, and it's not easy. It's not always easy to help people remotely in that situation, and there's only so much you can do. But if you keep your gain the same gain as your lights, and you get your ADU proper for the camera that you're using. I mean, typically most of the CMOS cameras, I've found anyways, most of the CMOS cameras tend to like 25 to 30,000 ADU range, and that works really well for me. That's what I've always used. So I try to steer people into that, give them that opportunity to try and use some of my knowledge when doing flats. And but there is that aspect where, like I said, I can only do so much remotely, and it falls on their shoulders to be able to pull off good flats in the end. But some people do. Some people take to it really quickly and understand it, and other people have more challenge with it, more challenges than they would like, I guess. But if you have a bad flat and you calibrate your data with it, it's just going to make processing the data so much more difficult. So, and in some cases, you might be better off not even using the flat if it's bad, But I mean, what the end result is going to be, I can't say. It all depends on the quality of the light frames too at that point. So
go back and shoot your flats.
Go back and shoot your flats. I've told people that many times. Go back and redo them, because I just had a gentleman actually that I was teaching. He's in Ireland, and I was teaching him PixInsight, and he's trying to do flats, and something is very wrong with his flats. We haven't figured out exactly where the problem lies, but something's very wrong. And I told him that we need to get the flats down. We need to understand what's going on. We need to get them fixed, because if we're going to use those flats within the calibration of the data, they've got to be proper. They've got to work. Otherwise, like he's got 27 hours on the Iris Nebula, but we can't do anything with it because the flats are just no good, and they ruin the data. So
what is the symptom of the bad flat in that situation?
Well, yeah, you know what, we like in this situation here with the gentleman from Ireland, we actually don't really know yet what's going on, and I can't see what he's doing. I'm not there when he's taking his flats and whatnot. So it makes it rather challenging to understand what is causing a bad flat for him.
Well, I'll give you an example of something that happened to me recently.
Yeah.
I have the two rigs. I use the exact same workflow in PixInsight. I get flawless performance every time from the Moravian AP155, and wild overcorrection. All the dust donuts become bright donuts instead of dark donuts, and the corners are way out of control. I could not figure out how the same workflow was producing terrible results in one and perfect results in the other. And after kicking it around for a bit, I shot all new bias frames and flat darks,
Mhm.
and it turned out the bias in my camera had shifted.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, that's possible. Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's in the CCD camera, you mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
Now I don't know if that's an issue for CMOS cameras, but I reshot everything, like everything, not
Yeah.
just and the problem vanished.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in CMOS cameras, bias frames are not required. You don't have to use
Okay.
them. Yeah.
All right.
And yeah. So that doesn't be that's certainly not an issue. What I do suggest though, if you're using CMOS, is to take the flat darks for sure, so that they can calibrate the flat frames. But yeah, bias frames are really no longer needed with regards to CMOS. If you're running CCD, yeah, that's a different story. Then the bias frames are required. But certainly with the CMOS cameras, that's one less problem that you have to worry about for sure.
Right. I wasn't positive about that, but I thought I'd share that because
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were fine. They looked
Yeah.
like normal flats. Like when you
Yeah.
look at the flat, they look great.
Yeah.
But when you applied them, they
When you
destroyed
applied
the
them, they
picture.
just destroyed the picture. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's
Definitely
well, that
my
was
problem.
that. Yeah, there was another problem too that was discovered with taking flats, and they weren't working when they were applied to the light frames. They would leave well, they would leave dust donuts behind, but they would look like they were embossed, like 3D sort of dust donuts. And it turned out to be the filter wheels. So the filter wheels rotating in two directions, depending on which direction it switched to the filter was offset slightly. It wasn't lining up properly, and it was causing the problem. And that took quite a while to figure out. It was actually there was a gentleman in Ottawa that actually sort of figured it out to some degree as to what was going on. And the camera manufacturers, filter wheel manufacturers, QHY and ZWO and all them and stuff, they actually came out with a fix for it that allowed you to only rotate the filter wheel in one direction, which solved the problem. But yeah, it was something that I was experiencing. Sometimes my flats would work, and then other times my flats wouldn't, and I had no idea what was going on. I reshot the flats; everything was perfect. Like there was no reason for the flats not to work, but they didn't. And no one at the time would have thought that it was caused by the chosen rotation that the filter was taking, and being slightly offset depending on which direction it went. So that was interesting. I originally thought it was maybe it seemed to occur more in colder situations, so I thought maybe it was the filter, the filter cell itself, the metal, pinching the glass, that maybe was causing the problem. But turns out it wasn't. In the end, it was the filter wheel and the rotation. So that fix was issued oh that was like last summer. They issued that fix in the updates that they had available. So now you can control, you can set the filter wheel anyways to only rotate one direction, which solves the problem, like I said.
Maybe move it over and give the Craig. I know you had a question about adding HA to some galaxies or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you bet. Hey, Shawn. Just
Hi.
quickly, I wanted to touch on. I don't want to take the conversation back to the ASI/Player One, but I did actually use a 2600 color camera until recently. I had issues with it about a month ago, so it's out for warranty. And I picked up a Player One Poseidon C that I've been using for a month, and it's actually really nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think you'll find they're nice cameras. And then I had driver issues. Like I used the Sky X, so I had the X2 driver and had some issues with it. But the guy that writes those drivers, like, he's super good. He within a day we had him sorted out and debugged, and it was good.
Wow,
But,
that's great. Good.
yeah,
That's good to know. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. Anyway, well, the HA thing. Obviously Galaxy season, so I've been doing galaxies, and I just find adding HA, typically the last few galaxies I've done have been like the 6 to 8 hours of one shot color, and then try and get about 4 or 5 hours of HA to add in.
Mhm.
But that process is very kind of hit and miss and all over the place. Everyone kind of has their own way to do it, and
Yeah.
I've tried a bunch of them, but I'm just kind of curious as to what you're getting the best results with.
I have some pixel math that I use, which integrates the data, the H alpha into the RGB data. It works fairly well, but I find that the best approach is to use a mask, an H alpha mask that isolates the H alpha region, so that when you're using the pixel math to apply it, it only drops it into those areas specifically, instead of applying it across the board to the entire image. That's going to cause problems right there if you don't use a mask. So I often will create a mask in one of several different ways that it's sometimes it's a trial and error that takes place, but definitely a mask, an H alpha mask applied to the RGB image, and then using the pixel math to apply the H alpha works rather well. There's a number of different techniques out there. It all depends on what's going to work best for you in your situation, really. And sometimes that's hard to arrive at. I mean, I struggled with that as well for quite a while, trying to get the H alpha data integrated properly. And I still do to this day. Sometimes, depending on the data that I'm, in the galaxy, as example, it can be problematic. I've even had to go to the extent of the H alpha mask blocking out the core of the galaxy, because applying the H alpha would drop it into the spots that you wanted to in the spiral arms and whatnot, but it would also apply it to the core of the galaxy, and it would turn it red basically, and it just looked awful. So I had to go in and use the clone stamp, the paint tool in PixInsight, and basically block out the core within the mask in order to prevent that from happening. So but yeah, I've got a couple different pixel math options that integrate H alpha into the RGB, and I can share them with you. I can definitely email you, and you can try them and see what you think. But really, you want to make sure that you're using a mask to integrate. If you're not using a mask, then it's going to be extremely difficult to do that. So, and you can create a mask in different ways. One of the easiest ways is just to make a clone of the H alpha image itself and adjust it with the histogram transformation tool to turn it into a mask, basically. That's one way you can do it. You could use other mask methods that exist in PixInsight as well, but that's one that I commonly use, because the H alpha image is a great source to create a mask from, since it's specifically targeting the areas that you want to drop that H alpha data into the RGB image. So, but yeah, I can share that with you. You can try it and see what you think. I'm not sure, what methods you've tried so far that haven't worked effectively, or you're having difficulty with, but you're welcome to, try the two pixel math options that I have, and see if that helps. It may be an answer for you.
Yeah, like the one I used recently was kind of adding in the you kind of use a pixel math, but you do it really early in the process.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually one of PixInsight's videos on their YouTube, and you're just blending a percentage of the H alpha or their HA red channel with the RGB red channel, and then using SPCC to kind of color correct afterwards. Yeah, but I find I get a lot of red noise that way, because it's adding it to everything, and then the stars, even all of that stuff goes a little red.
Are you using a mask though when you're doing that technique, or not? Have you tried?
Well, it's all linear on that side, so it's hard. I find it hard to mask
properly. You would have to make a, like in the case of that, you could make a clone of the H alpha linear image, and then stretch it, and then create your mask from that and apply
Oh,
it.
okay.
Okay, that would work, and that might actually help. I don't know specific. I haven't tried that technique that you're referring to. Something that I'll look into it, but using a mask in that way, often when you're creating masks and you're in a linear state like that, you're going to have to make a clone and stretch it and alter it a little bit to produce the mask that you need in order to apply it and have it work effectively. So, well, you could give that a try. That actually might be a possible solution for the problems that you're having.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I never thought of that. Stretching it and reapplying it.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Because what kind of worked was to do it that way and then separate out my channels afterwards and then process my luminance separately and then kind of just blur on the RGB, so it kind of blurs that red noise in a little bit before adding the luminance back in it. But still wasn't super happy with it, but it worked okay, I guess.
One of the things I tried, Craig, just recently was taking a range mask and subtracting it from the H-alpha mask itself. So you get rid of the core, or at least as much as the core as possible, so that you just have essentially the arms, the HA in the arms.
Yeah.
And I had a limited success with that. I think with a little bit more work, it might work, but that's it does get rid of that red right in the core, which sort of really detracts from the whole image.
Yeah, that's interesting too.
That might work.
Yeah, something to try anyway. So you've got a couple options there that you can run with and see if that helps in your situation.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's definitely have to do some more playing with it.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Well, Shawn, maybe I'll step in. And first of all, I'd like to just thank you for your all your help in the Astro community. The YouTube channel is fantastic, and I've really learned an awful lot from your YouTubes and taken a little bit from everybody. I mean, it's amazing how much people really like to share. And and I've only been in this whole sort of business for about 5 years, but I've learned an awful lot from your videos, and I certainly thank you for that. But my question that I have, and maybe it's more of a comment, is working with narrowband. There's a couple of trains of thought here, and I've tried them both, and I just wanted to see what you thought in terms of looking at star color. Do you take, for instance, your narrowband and you work on those individually before combining, or would you combine the RGB and then remove the stars with Star Exterminator or something, and then go after SPCC? Or do you do that right at the front and look at each individual channels and then combine your stars up at that point? Do you understand, or did I make myself clear?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understood it exactly, but when I'm working with, if I'm working with RGB, so if let's say an LRGB data set as example, I would combine the RGB channels first before I started doing anything in terms of like I wouldn't work on them separately. I have done that in the past where I've worked on them separately and then combined, but there really wasn't any advantage to doing that I saw. It was just more work in the end. So I combine the RGB and I work on that, and then I will work on the luminance separately, of course, and integrate it. And then I'll do the same. The only ones that I really work on individually would be the narrowband for the most part. The H-alpha data, the O3 and that, I'll work on those individually before integrating them and whatnot. So I basically process those images to a finished point for the most part, and then integrate them at that point using pixel math. I found that to be the most effective way and the least amount of work anyways. I mean, I tend to, I don't want to say, I'm lazy about it, but image processing takes a lot of times. And if you can, tweak your workflow so that you can avoid some extra steps and save some time, that certainly is, that's great. Because I mean, I have certainly been down the road of spending, a lot of time doing things in PixInsight that I just dread. It's like, oh, I got to do that again. It takes so much time and whatnot. So I've sort of looked at the workflows and sort of tweak things so that I don't have to necessarily spend a lot of extra time. And not working on individual channels like that is one way that I save some time in processing. I just combine and the RGB channels anyways, and work on that as a single image.
Yeah, and when I've done it with narrowband, that's what I typically do. I'll combine and then pull out the stars and then work on the stars separately.
Yes.
But then I've seen a couple of videos where people will take HA03 and S2, pull out the stars first, then do the SPCC, and then combine the individual star channels up. And I didn't know whether there was any benefit to that or not. It just seemed a lot of extra work, really. But
it's probably there probably isn't a lot of extra any benefit really. It just is more work in the end. It's kind of like the generalized hyperbolic stretch. It's overly complicated. It's more work than it's worth. It really.
I haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, well, I've sort of figured it out, but it just doesn't, like, it's much to do about nothing really in the end. Like you can achieve the same result doing a manual stretch using the histogram transformation tool. You can achieve the same result by using like, I don't know if you're familiar with Bill Blanchard. He put out some pixel math for a number of different things, but one of them was stretching images, and his unlinked stretch works really well, and it's easy to use. You practically, in most situations, you're just dragging and dropping it, and you're getting the same result that you would if you went through the whole process of the generalized hyperbolic stretch. So I'm not really seeing an advantage to something like that, and it just makes more work. And why spend the time when it's not going to deliver anything better in the end?
True enough. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Thanks for the question. Appreciate that.
Bill also has the GHS script. That's
yeah,
really
he does.
quick and
I've
easy, I
tried
find,
it.
to use.
Yeah, I've worked with it. I've tried it. I don't find it works very effectively. I talked to Bill about that a few times and stuff, and it is what it is. I don't use it myself. I just never got any good results with it. So that was sort of a similar situation to his most recent release of the normalization, the HOO normalization and the show normalization pixel math. He came out with version 5. I actually have better success using version 3 than version 5 myself. And I've worked with him on it just to see if we could come to some sort of understanding as to why I was getting the different results, and we haven't figured it out yet. But certainly he's got some great stuff, and he's made it really easy to do. It's like Russell Croman with his add-ons, noise exterminator and blur exterminator. And I shook my fist at Russ when he came out with blur exterminator, because it worked so well that not only did he take my money instantly, but I spent just countless days reprocessing old data because it was just such a fantastic result and such an improvement. So I was a very quick adopter of Russ's tools because they work so well. Even the noise exterminator, as example, that saves so much time. It works beautifully, and it saves so much time and so many steps that it makes the enjoyment of image processing in PixInsight better, I think, in the end, because you don't have to go through a lot of cumbersome routines and whatnot. And that was one thing I dreaded when I had mentioned about some things I dreaded, that noise reduction in PixInsight. I just dreaded doing it, you know, getting into TVG denoise and making masks and all these different things, and, you know, fiddling with the parameters and trying to find what worked best. And it was just a long drawn out process. And I often, you know, would skip it sometimes just because I just dreaded doing it. But then, you know, Russ came out with his noise exterminator, and that just, you know, worked instantly and beautifully. And it didn't damage anything, and it didn't affect any faint stars or anything like that. It just went after the noise. So really phenomenal to see some of the improvements that have come along over the, you know, last few years, even the last couple of years, with regards to the technology that we have now available to us for doing our image processing.
Maybe Shawn, I'll ask one quick question if I can, or maybe Richard, and
Yeah.
that is oblong stars. I've got an Edge 8, and you know, I do everything from f7 right to the hyperstar. And trying to get your stars nice and tight, especially around the edges, are always a headache. And I think in part it might be because I have an ASI, you know, one of the early 1600 mm. So I think it's sensor tilt in part. But any thoughts in terms of PixInsight, how to correct some of the aberrations that you might see with some of the stars?
The best tool right now that I've seen that works really effectively is Blur Exterminator. If you're not using it, get it. It's a little expensive, you know, $100 or whatever it is, $89 US. But it actually works really well.
I bought it right after I watched your video. I was
Is that right?
I was so enthralled with it.
Yeah.
It is a real game changer. But
it depends on how severe the problem is. I mean, there's limitations as to how you can correct it. You know, you could there is the what I'm trying to think what it is, and I haven't used it in so long now, I can't think of the name of it, but there is an option within PixInsight that will help. It won't fix the elongated stars, but it will reduce it substantially. And actually, just give me a second, it's bugging me now. Let me just look up what it was again. I believe it was under
was that the multi-scale linear transformation?
No. It's actually under deconvolution. So it's the motion blur PSF, and you can actually adjust the angle of the to the direction of the elongation and the length of it too. So you can really fine tune it, apply that, and it'll fix the problem to some degree. It won't fix it entirely, but it'll certainly fix it to a point that is noticeable. There's a video that I have. It's probably 2 years old, 3 years old, maybe at this point, about fixing egg-shaped stars in PixInsight. If you go to my channel and search for that, I believe I called it something to the effect of fixing egg-shaped stars, and it's got a picture of an egg on it anyways for the thumbnail. You can't miss it, but that'll actually run you through the routine in PixInsight, how that works, and that might be an option for you to explore and at least reduce the problem. But if you're getting elongated stars, like, are you talking in the corners, or are you talking throughout the entire field of view?
No, it's mainly in the corners. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I would check your backspacing on that situation then. If you've got elongated stars in the corner, it's most likely backspacing issue that you're dealing with.
That's what I was thinking. Although when I took a look at through Nina, the aberration inspector, and it keeps telling me that I've got, you know, a 0.3 degree dip in the sensor angle.
Sensor tilt?
Yeah, sensor tilt. And so hence the reason for looking for a new camera with a tilt.
Yeah, well, yeah, you can run into two problems there. You can run into a sensor tilt issue, of course, which has to be corrected, but backspacing can also be an issue too. I've had to deal with backspacing issues that become very, very small amounts of change. I'm talking like 0.3 of a millimeter. I actually had spacers that would do shims, I guess I should call them, that were 0.3 millimeters, and I had to use those in order to correct the back focus. It was that specific. So I would definitely I would look at your backspacing first and make sure, like, it doesn't hurt to experiment with it. Like full moon, you know how we always have clear nights on full moon, you know? Or I should say, we get a clear night when it's full moon. Those are great times to do testing, you know, and try adjusting your backspacing and see what that brings up. And also, once you get that fixed, then look at your sensor tilt after that.
Sure. Okay. Thank you,
Shawn. David, it would seem to me that if you have sensor tilt, the symptoms are different than if you have a backspacing problem. So if you have a square sensor and all the stars are elongated in the direction of the corners, then you have a backspacing problem for sure.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if you have the same direction distortion across the frame, then you have sensor tilt.
Yeah, and that's what I have. They're all going in one direction.
Oh, they're all going in one direction. Okay.
Now you may correct it and have a backspacing problem, but you have to square the sensor first before you can solve the backspace problem.
Yeah.
Well, hence the reason I'm in the market for a new camera. So
and people are raving about German guy. He makes all kinds of add-ons for gear. He has a tilt adjuster that can go in front of any camera.
Oh yeah, I know which one you're talking about. I can't think of the name.
I know the guy. If I didn't want his name, I would know it. Anyway, we all know who I'm talking about. He sells flat field devices and a bunch of other toys, right? Anyway, he makes a sensor tilter that everybody on the AP user group are raving about. They're all throwing their ZWO and ASI ones out and, you know, complaining about them.
Problem you have sometimes, obviously, with you may be very limited with the back focus, which is what I have. So trying to put a tilt adjuster in there is almost a non-starter, and hence, you know, it's time to sort of upgrade from a 60 QE camera to something that's greater than 90, you know, and plus all the benefits that come with some of the newer technology there. So okay, well, thank you for the ideas. That gives me something to think about.
Sure. No, that was great. Thanks for chiming in there, Stuart, too. That was awesome.
Yusuf, did you have want to give you a chance to ask some questions there?
I don't really have any specific questions. I just came to listen to what people are asking, learn. As right up front, I use PixInsight only for a few features right now. I still do a lot in Photoshop. It's funny, your discussion, I was kind of, I don't know if you saw me laughing, Shawn, at the intro, because you're historical as me, you know. Start off with DSLR, all Photoshop, you know, learning from some videos that I've seen, and I've only slowly moved away from that. But again, I still haven't quite converted to PixInsight. Because for your same reason, it's like I know everything else right now. I can do it in Photoshop. Let's just move one piece over, and then move another piece over, and maybe one day I'll get everything moved over.
The best thing you can do is delete Photoshop, and then you have no choice but to use PixInsight. That's what I actually did. I actually deleted Photoshop. I stopped using it. I just took it off the system completely, so that I didn't have a choice. I had to use PixInsight, and that along with doing a lot of trial and error was one of the ways that I adapted to the PixInsight environment and got more familiar with it and that. But I find that, you know, realistically, aside from the terminology they use, which can be a little confusing, I find that a lot of people are overcomplicating their image processing, and sometimes less is more, I find. And I've sort of, at this point, I've really streamlined my image processing so that the workflow isn't overly complicated, and I still get excellent results. And I often will show beginners, when I'm doing my one-on-one sessions, I'll show them some of that basic workflow, which will give you phenomenal results. And it's not overly complicated. It's pretty straightforward. And one of the best things you can do in PixInsight is line your icons up, create your icons that you can use and reuse, and order them in terms of your workflow, so that they're basically a guide as to the steps that you want to take. Now, depending on the data and the object, you have to be a little fluid with it. You can't just follow, one workflow for every image. It doesn't work like that. But there are a number of steps, especially in the beginning, that are repeatable for all data sets before you might start having to deviate slightly. But I just find that a lot of people that come to me, the way they're approaching it is, well, either they don't know how to use PixInsight, or if they're familiar with it to some degree, they've just overcomplicated their image processing and made it that much more difficult for themselves. So I try to show them a different way of doing it that works a little more effectively.
Ironically, in my situation, I'd say is I definitely try to keep mine very simplistic, because I don't have the patience or the time to spend that much effort. But I know what I've done is I've gone a little bit too much like everywhere. So I mean, I like it, but it's also to simplify me. I've bought things like the denoise AI, and so some of the stuff when you talk about making it simpler, that's my problem going PixInsight. I'm like, okay, how much more work I'm going to put myself? How do I simplify it there?
Yeah,
when I have some tools out there that do a couple steps for me probably in PixInsight already. And so like even now I'm still using Deep Sky Stacker because I think it's so quick and easy. And I find PixInsight harder, and I know you're probably doing that. And part of the reason I do that is the last time I tried doing it, it's like it ran for an hour and a half. It's sucking up all my power of my computer, and it's like, well, my Deep Sky Stacker does it in 5 minutes. What the hell's going on here? And I just haven't spent time to try and fight with it to figure it out. It's those typical things. It's like, well, it gave me a problem, so I'll still keep using Deep Sky Stacker, and I go PixInsight step. And you're right, it just matters spend the time on it and get used to it.
Yeah, I've got a student right now that's doing that. I'm actually going to show him how to use weighted batch preprocessing to calibrate and align and stack all the data and that. But he's using Deep Sky Stacker, and that was one of the first questions I asked him. Why are you using that? So I mean, not that it doesn't work well. It does work well, but everything can be done inside PixInsight, and it produces such a good result. That was actually, I think that was a question that was posed, was about doing that whole routine manually or using weighted batch preprocessing. And the answer to that is there really is no difference anymore. They've really developed the weighted batch preprocessing script to such a degree that to do it manually is just a lot of work for nothing. There's no difference in terms of what the end result is going to be. There was probably a difference when it was the batch preprocessing script, the early days, but now with the new one and the amount of development that they've put into it, there is no difference. There's no point in doing it all manually. There's no advantage to that. You might as well just dump it all into the weighted batch preprocessing and let it do its job.
I think in the days of BPP, it had a disclaimer that came up when you ran
it. Yeah, it did. Yeah, it actually said that. Yeah, it doesn't.
Don't use this.
Yeah, it wouldn't. It would tell you that it wouldn't give the best results. Basically, is what that disclaimer said. Yeah, but that's no longer the case now that we've got the weighted batch preprocessing script. It's completely changed the game inside PixInsight.
Yeah, and certainly some of the newer masks, create masks, are really helpful too. Whether it's individual color masks or a range selection mask, or even some of the star masks.
I've
Or
actually had really good results using the ACDNR lightness mask tool for
Oh,
creating
okay.
masks. Yeah, I actually did a video on it and demonstrated how effectively it worked. You could really fine tune the mask much better than, say, using the range selection tool or something like that. So that's something to consider. I mean, when you're doing your image processing, one way of making a mask may not work in all situations. So you need to have, different approaches in your tool set. And that ACDNR lightness mask works really nice for creating masks if you want to give it a try.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you.
I mean, I think for me, and the other problem that I've had, and now I'm interested in just checking out shows, so many people have done their own videos on how to use the tool, and it's just sometimes it's like I'm watching, like, and to your point, some like, okay, what all are these guys doing, right? And trying to find like what I would consider a good tutorial. I find that tough for a lot of these tools, not just PixInsight, but that's one of the things I've also struggled with is and
sounds like
I'm
you
kind
need
of
some
curious,
one-on-one.
but it's you sound like an interesting fellow because you're someone who's willing to do that. Because I haven't found someone to be, I mean, depending on how much you charge and and that type of thing,
Well,
how.
you know what? I actually worked out a deal with you're probably familiar with Wayne Parker, Skyshed Observatories. I actually worked out a deal with him that anybody that he refers to me, they get a discount basically on the hourly rate. So I'd be happy to extend that to the Edmonton RASC as well. Anyone that's interested, I can certainly give you that discount. The same that I'm doing for Skyshed Observatories, and we can get you ironed out and that. And you know what? It may not take that much time. Typically, I find for the most part, depending on how quick of a learner you are, it varies from person to person, but a couple hours, an hour or two, and we can get you set up and working within PixInsight and give you a workflow that will work effectively for you and make it easy. I try to make it easy for you to understand how to without complicating it too much, giving you the basics. And I think I could get you up and running real quick in PixInsight if you wanted to take advantage of that one-on-one with me. Something to consider.
And so, and the only other question I have, because we had this, we shifted from the flat topic. So how do you know your flats are bad? I mean, I've just assumed mine are good. I mean, they've been working well most of the time. I don't see any issues.
Yeah, you'll know they're bad when they don't fix the problems in your optical train, basically. So I mean, one of the telltale signs that your flats aren't working properly is if the dust donuts aren't removed from the light frames. Another one would be if they're if things are overexposed, almost looking in the sense of the field, like across the field of view. You want to take the flat frame is going to sort of take out a lot of the problems that you'll run into in the optical train with regards to vignetting and whatnot. If it's not correcting that, then you're going to know that it's a bad flat, and you'd have to go back and readdress it. But a lot of times what I've found is it's a trial and error when you're getting used to taking flats and finding what works best for your equipment. But just keep going. Don't give up on it. And what camera?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I mean, I've been doing it and I haven't seen any issues. That's why I say there's bad flats.
Okay.
I'm like,
Okay.
I don't even know if I've ever had one. Maybe I've been lucky and it's always worked out.
You
But
might,
I mean,
yeah, you might.
the tool I use has the same thing. It has an auto does the exposure.
Yep.
It's doing it all for me. So I'm like,
Yep.
okay, it's working well.
Yeah. If
I'm
you
happy
don't
with it.
notice, if you don't notice any problems, if you don't see anything that's obviously wrong with the master light, then the flats are probably working just fine, and you're doing a good job with it. So. But some people get lucky like that, and other people struggle, really bad trying to get good flats. It's not always easy, but You know, great that you're having that success anyways.
Yes, I assume it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd have to look at your data and then maybe I could tear it
Yeah, you
apart.
can look at my data like, man, if you just spent a little bit more effort here, it would look like
Yeah.
this.
Hey, can I share my screen for a second?
Yeah,
I just
sure.
want to kind of like speak to this. Let's see here. Share that screen. Where are you?
The other thing that's
Um,
always a problem is slight rotation of imaging, and if your rotator manual in Nina, for instance, says, you know, move it over a tenth of a degree or something, then your flats, if you forget to do your flats, then they'll show up really badly.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Any change in your optical train like that is going to affect your flats.
yeah, this is kind of what I was speaking to earlier about. This is the original TIFF
Mhm.
file stretched, auto stretch.
Yep.
And then I run automatic background extractor, basically at default to settings, and
Mhm.
I'm getting this like this.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, I see that.
I call it the, you know, it just makes the picture a mess. And I have
Yeah.
to spend, you know, 80% of my effort and time on just kind of getting this to chill out a little bit here.
Yeah, stop using automatic background extractor.
Is
That's my
that's
advice
kind of
right
causing,
there.
yeah.
Yeah. What you need to do is you either need to start using the dynamic background extraction and placing your sample points strategically, or you could also try. I don't know if you've heard of GrackSpurt. It's a
Oh yeah, yeah.
astronomical background extraction tool that it works really well too. In fact, I almost think in my testing, it works maybe slightly better than dynamic background extraction does. It's very similar to dynamic background extraction, but the results that I get from GrackSpurt are really, really nice. Superior. And I think that if you got away from the automatic background extractor, which often creates these problems, you're going to find that, you're not going to have the problem, first of all, and your image processing is going to be so much easier too. You're not going to be fighting these issues that you're seeing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that what you use? Is the
Yeah, I actually use it quite a bit. Yeah. It's an extra step. It's a standalone program. It's free. And you can download it. It's an extra step in that sense that you're outside of PixInsight to do the background extraction, but the results are really nice, really well. It works really well, and I think that you'll find that it'll fix all of these problems that you're seeing.
Perfect.
Shawn, does it work on 32-bit images or only 16-bit?
It works on both, actually. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I use
So
AB
One of your
once in a while, but more on like nebulae, where I've got like an obvious gradient, and it seems to work okay there. But generally, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I've never really had good success with automatic background extraction.
DBE is way better.
Yeah, DBE is far superior. It's just some people struggle with DBE and how to use it effectively, but it isn't really complicated once you understand it. It's pretty simple to use. So I would definitely use the DBE or use the GrackSpurt. And it doesn't hurt. GrackSpurt, like I said, is free. Download it.
How do you spell it?
GrackSpert. GrackSpurt. I think maybe I can I put that in the chat maybe, and then people know how to spell it. GrackSpurt. Just like that. I just put it in the chat.
Yep.
So you can see it. That's how it's spelled. So if you search that, you can download it. Like I said, free, and it works really nicely.
So you use that like almost first thing in your process then? Because I mean, DBE is usually
I will.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's got in addition to being able to do the background extraction, it's got a crop capability as well. So you can crop the artifacts, the bad edges out and whatnot, and then you can run through GrackSpurt. It's pretty straightforward. You create your sample points. It'll create the sample points automatically. after you click the button to do that, and then you can calculate the background extraction and see if you like it. If you don't, you can make adjustments and do it again until you're satisfied, and then you can save that image and then bring it into PixInsight.
Downloading now.
I noticed there are a bunch of videos from some famous educator in PixInsight that came up right away on how to use Grasper.
Oh,
Shawn, does that Grasper, does it use an XIFT file, or does it,
Yep.
do we have to convert?
No, it'll use that. Yeah, it'll use fit files and the other. Yeah. It's very it's very good at being flexible with what you want to throw at it. So definitely check it out though. And I like I said, I think it'll solve a lot of your problems.
It was funny. I was about to say, how do you compare that to grading exterminator? But then it hit me. Well, but that's Photoshop. I'll shut up.
Yeah,
That's what I've been using for quite a while.
Well, you know what, Russ's tool, Gradient Exterminator, is great. It works really well, but it's in the Photoshop environment,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
a different story there. But I would actually, if you're getting, I think you had mentioned that you're using AI denoise. That you had bought that. If you do migrate over to PixInsight, definitely pick up Russ's noise exterminator, because it's actually designed for astronomical images and dealing with the noise inherent in them, and it works way better than AI denoise does.
I've used the Topaz products on my daytime photography.
Yeah.
If you look really carefully at your stars after using Topaz, you'll see that the edges are all ragged.
Yep.
Because it doesn't know what those are, and it just shreds the star profiles.
Yeah, it does.
If it was zoom way out, you'll think, oh, it must have worked great. But then you zoom in, it damages your stars.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. That's exactly what I found, that it was damage. It was causing damage to the image. So, and it may not look that way, when you're zoomed out, but if you zoom in and do inspect things, you'll quickly notice the damage that it's doing. So, noise exterminator doesn't do that because it's a completely different beast with regards to noise reduction. So definitely,
Shawn,
definitely try that.
With noise exterminator, I know, thanks for your video on that issue with using it before stretching, because it creates that issue sometimes that your stretch images go all messed up. I struggled with that. It was driving me crazy until I watched your videos.
There you go.
But do you do any noise reduction in linear at all, or do you just wait till after you stretch?
I've done it both ways. I've experimented with it both ways, and quite honestly, I have not seen a difference with regards to the results. It's largely a preference if you want to do the noise exterminator in a linear state or do it in a non-linear state. I have not noticed any difference. Any of the data that I have that I've worked with has not revealed any difference in that sense. So I know that some people will say to do it in a linear state, but Russ even says you can use it more than once in your workflow, and he's alluding to the fact that you can use it in a non-linear state as well in that sense. So I've done it both ways and haven't noticed a difference. So however you want to do it is, whatever works best for you, whatever gives you the best results is there's no wrong or right to it. It's just how you want to approach it and what works best for you in the end.
I definitely use it before and after, and I'm happy with both times.
Yeah. I've used it. Yeah, I've used it before and after as well, and it works really well in all cases.
Yeah, just that weird stretching issue I was getting using it before sometimes. So
yeah, that was kind of funny. Yeah, I was struggling with that too, and I actually had a student that was struggling with it, and it was that situation that led me to sort of investigate it a bit more and try and figure out what was going on in the workflow that was causing that. And yeah, it turned out to be Noise Exterminator. So, you know, not a fault of Noise Exterminator, not anything like that. It's just, it just works so well that it messes with the algorithm when it's doing the auto stretch like that. So,
Can I make a plug for PixInsight as an ardent Photoshop user for use of taking the grad X approach? You're really late in your process when you're taking the gradient out. And if you're doing color correction and all the other things you would want to do in PixInsight first, and you're leaving the gradient in there, I think you're going to really not be happy with your color. And if you wait till you get to Photoshop to do the gradient removal. Because to me, grad X was designed to pull a gradient out when you're looking at a pretty finished product and you're
yes.
trying to improve it.
Yeah.
And the point of removing gradients using DB or whatever in PixInsight is you want to get them out early so that you're not stretching things that aren't supposed to be there in the first place.
Yeah, yeah, and it'll make your processing a lot easier too by getting it out early. Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, I mean, like when I do my image processing, the background extraction is second, basically. I do a crop first. I'll do a dynamic crop first just to get rid of any artifacts on the edges and stuff like that that might exist from the stacking process. And then the first thing I do is the dynamic background extraction or the Graxpert and get rid of that gradients, anything that's going to make the processing more difficult and affect the final image in a negative way. I just get rid of it right at the start instead of waiting till the end like that.
If I hate to talk as much as I'm talking because I'm a guest, but you just said something that I was curious about because the newest version of the weighted batch pre-processing script now offers to auto crop.
Yeah, I don't like it. It doesn't.
Oh, really? I've been using it and it's been okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, the problem is that, like, see, I like to. I guess I don't like it because I like to have my own say with regards to how the image is cropped, and I don't want it to be auto cropped at all. And
well, it only crops to get rid of the crap on the edges.
But I find that I sort of, from an artistic sort of point of view, that I may not like. It doesn't serve an advantage to me, anyways, to auto crop using the weighted batch pre-processing, just because it's so simple to do a crop anyways inside PixInsight. And
I end up doing the dynamic crop after frequently anyway.
Yeah. Well, I might, like I said, I'll customize my crop, to sort of frame my image how I want to. So to have weighted batch pre-processing do the crop for me really doesn't give, it's no advantage. So I generally don't use it. It's sort of, it's also like, local normalization in the weighted batch pre-processing script. I don't use that anymore either because it adds a lot of time, first of all, to the whole process. But anything that it's doing, dynamic background extraction or Graxpert can do, can remedy. So I don't actually use local normalization anymore either. So those are two things inside weighted batch pre-processing that I don't check off when I'm using it.
Interesting. Okay, that's interesting. Well, I agree with you totally on the artistic crop.
Yeah.
It's never going to solve that problem on its own.
No.
What I was liking about it, and this is, I don't mean to belabor it. What I liked was when I start the initial stretch, I don't find I'm stretching the crap on the edges that's throwing off the left side of the histogram. So they got a cleaner left side of my histogram when I start looking at it, and then I think that's the only advantage I see to it is you don't see the crap that you know for sure is never going to be in your final image anyway. You don't see that in your histograms when you're first starting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's, if you want to use it and it's, you find a benefit to it, then by all means, use it. But my own personal experience, I don't bother with it anyways. So, because I usually end up doing a customized crop and for my artistic point of view, and and then I have to do an image solve and whatnot if I'm going to use SPCC and so forth. So yeah, I just avoid it in the weighted batch preprocessing script. Interesting that they added it, you know, great that they did, you know, and it does work, but just something that I don't use.
Is there a negative to be using local normalization, or is it just a time savings thing?
Just a time saving thing, really. I mean, it'll normalize your gradients and make it, it might make background extraction a little easier, but the reality is that anything the local normalization is doing in terms of ironing out gradients, you're still going to have to do a background extraction regardless. And it just didn't make sense to me to use it. It just added so much more time to the weighted batch preprocessing script that I just didn't see the advantage trying it both ways. I just didn't see the advantage to it. So it's really just a time saver for me just to not use it and leave it up to doing a good background extraction.
Well, that's awesome, Shawn. I think maybe that is a good place to kind of maybe end it on. Perfect. Well, I thanks everybody for coming, and this was great. And we're gonna just have more of these. So, and I think there'll be a wide variety. So we did one on PixInsight. It'd be great to do one on Photoshop, or even something like Cyril. A lot of people are using that more and more. So, and we're gonna do something like Shoot the Moon, where we'll all go shoot the moon, and then we're gonna come back and process the moon and kind of go through that process of just like a simple form all the way up to stacking and processing. So there's lots of other things that are going to be coming down the pipeline on the AstroImaging channel, the cafe here. So again, I appreciate everybody coming, and if any of you have any questions, you can email me, and the next event will be on May 17th. And I'll make an announcement shortly about what that will be about.